The first thing Callum Mercer noticed was not the peeling paint on the tiny house or the overgrown flowers struggling beside the front porch. It was the little girl who came running across the yard with bright laughter, throwing herself into the arms of the woman he had spent 10 years trying to forget. In that single heartbeat, the millionaire who had built an empire from nothing realized that every fortune he had earned suddenly felt painfully small. Callum had once believed that success could silence regret. He had convinced himself that walking away from his fiancée, Eliza Rowan, had been necessary. Back then he had been drowning in debt, chasing impossible dreams, and convinced that love could wait until he became someone worthy of it. When an opportunity to join a powerful investment firm demanded he move across the country and abandon everything familiar, he made the choice without looking back. He promised himself he would return when he was successful enough to give Eliza the life she deserved. But life had not waited for either of them. Years passed. His company expanded into one of the largest construction businesses in the region. Luxury homes, expensive cars, private flights, and magazine covers became normal parts of his life. Yet every achievement felt strangely empty whenever he remembered the woman who had once believed in him before anyone else did. When Callum finally learned that Eliza still lived in their hometown after the death of her grandmother, curiosity mixed with guilt until he could no longer ignore it. He cancelled meetings, left behind the polished skyscrapers that carried his company's name, and drove back to the quiet town where every street reminded him of promises he had broken. Nothing looked quite the same except the old oak tree in the town square where he had once asked Eliza to marry him with a simple silver ring he could barely afford. She had cried tears of happiness that day, telling him she would choose a life of struggle with him over a life of comfort with anyone else. He had been the one who walked away. As he stood outside her modest home, he expected bitterness, anger, or perhaps complete indifference. Instead, he saw something far more painful. Eliza looked tired. Her clothes were simple, and years of hard work showed on her hands. Yet when she smiled at the little girl holding her hand, warmth filled her face in a way he had never forgotten. Neighbors greeted her with genuine affection. She stopped to help an elderly man carry groceries, comforted a crying child who had fallen from a bicycle, and waved cheerfully to everyone she passed. She had very little, yet she seemed richer than anyone Callum had met in years. Watching from a distance, he felt an unfamiliar ache growing inside him. He had returned believing he might offer financial help or perhaps even seek forgiveness. Instead, he was beginning to understand that the greatest loss of his life had never been money, opportunity, or success. It had been the future he could have shared with the woman who had loved him when he had nothing. Callum stood frozen for several minutes before finally gathering the courage to walk toward the small house. Every expensive suit he had ever worn, every award displayed in his office, and every headline celebrating his success suddenly felt meaningless. He had imagined this reunion countless times, but none of those dreams had prepared him for the quiet dignity he saw in Eliza's life. She did not seem defeated by hardship. Instead, she carried herself with the quiet strength of someone who had survived disappointment without allowing it to harden her heart. When Eliza noticed him standing by the old wooden gate, surprise crossed her face. For a brief moment, memories seemed to flash through her eyes before she offered a calm, polite smile. There was no anger, no dramatic confrontation, only the distance created by years that could never be recovered. That gentle kindness hurt Callum more than any accusation ever could. As they walked through the garden, he learned that the cheerful little girl was Eliza's niece, whom she had been raising after her sister passed away from an illness several years earlier. Eliza had worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads, sacrificing every personal dream to give the child a safe and loving home. The house was small, and money was often tight, but laughter filled every room. Callum looked around at the worn furniture and faded family photographs. He realized that this humble home contained something his luxurious mansion never had. It was filled with love, purpose, and genuine happiness. Overcome with guilt, he admitted that he had never stopped thinking about her. He confessed that every achievement had reminded him of the one person who had believed in him before success ever arrived. He had spent years convincing himself that wealth would erase regret, but standing before her proved that some losses could never be replaced. Eliza listened quietly. Her eyes softened, but they also carried wisdom earned through pain. She had waited for him once. For months she had believed he would return. Eventually she understood that life could not be lived while waiting for promises that never came. She chose to forgive him long ago, not because he deserved it, but because carrying bitterness would have stolen the joy she still had. Those words struck Callum harder than any business failure. He realized forgiveness was not the same as getting a second chance. Some doors closed forever, even when both people had good hearts. Determined to become someone worthy of the forgiveness he had received, Callum began supporting local schools, community programs, and struggling families in the town without attaching his name to any of it. He quietly funded scholarships for children who dreamed of attending college and helped renovate the community center where Eliza volunteered. For the first time in years, he gave without expecting applause. Months later, the town slowly changed. Children had better opportunities. Families found hope where despair had once lived. Callum discovered that generosity brought a deeper satisfaction than any business deal ever had. One sunny afternoon, he returned to the little house carrying nothing more than a basket of fresh flowers for the garden. Eliza smiled warmly as the little girl proudly showed him vegetables they had grown together. Sitting on the porch beneath the afternoon sun, Callum finally understood the lesson life had spent years trying to teach him. The greatest treasures were never measured by bank accounts, luxury homes, or public admiration. They were measured by the people who stood beside you when you had nothing, the kindness you offered without expecting anything in return, and the courage to become a better person even when the past could never be changed. Before this story comes to an end, leave a meaningful comment telling us what you believe matters most in life: wealth, love, or the people who never give up on us. As Callum drove away that afternoon, he no longer felt like the richest man in the world. He felt like a man who had finally learned the true cost of the choices he had made. Although he could never reclaim the life he once dreamed of with Eliza, he carried something far more valuable than regret. He carried gratitude, humility, and the determination to spend the rest of his days making sure no one else had to lose what truly mattered before realizing its worth. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Sometimes the greatest success in life is not becoming rich, it is learning, before it is too late, that love, kindness, and forgiveness are the only treasures that truly last.